All right, Podheads, today we're going to talk about speakers and crossover ranges. Each speaker set in an SQ build, or any build for that matter, has a specific set of frequencies that those speakers play because those speakers play those frequencies very well. You have tweeters, mid-range, mid-bass, and subs. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've measured all of my different speakers that I will be using a measurement microphone. So there's a couple ways to do it, but in order to get the best frequency response range out of any speaker is to do a near field response measurement. So basically hold the microphone very close to the speaker, and what that does is that gives us a very accurate representation of how well that speaker plays what frequencies. So looking at the measurements, we have our tweeter, our 3-inch mid-range, our 12-inch mid-bass, and our 8-inch mid-bass. And the goal is to have each one of these speakers play a certain frequency range that is determined by our target curve. A good way to set the crossover range between two speakers is to look at the limitations of the individual driver. The output of the mid-range starts dropping off around 3000 Hz, whereas the tweeter can't play anything really below 3000 Hz. We can also look at the distortion graphs and see that the tweeter distortion starts rising about 3000 Hz, and the mid-range starts getting a little wonky around 3000 Hz. So a 3000 Hz crossover point would be perfect for these two speakers. Setting the crossover point between the mid-range and the mid-bass is done basically the same way. We look at the behavior of both the 12-inch and the 8-inch, compare that to the 3-inch. So here at about 400, 500 Hz, the 12-inch starts losing a little bit of performance and getting crazy, and the 8-inch is kind of doing about the same thing. Now the mid-range can play all the way down to 200, but we want the mid-bass speakers to do a little bit more work. We can also look at the distortion graphs and see that the 12-inch starts getting crazy around 450 Hz, and the 8-inch is kind of doing the same thing. Yet another reason why we would like to set the crossover point at 400 Hz. Setting the high-pass frequency for the mid-bass speakers is very important as well. We want the mid-bass speakers to play as low as possible in order to keep the subwoofer from playing any high frequencies. Right now our limitation is the natural roll-off of these two speakers, which happens around 80, 70, 75 Hz. We can look at the distortion graph in the 75, 70 Hz range and notice that the 12-inch doesn't have hardly any distortion down low. The 8-inch starts rising about 100 Hz. However, low-end distortion is not as audible as high-end distortion. So we can get away with a little bit extra distortion here. Now with our crossover point set, we can set up our target curves, do a little EQ work, and we'll be good for the next step. In the next video, we'll go over amplifier selection and how to select the correct amplifier for your system. Boosh.